Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday, January 14th regular council meeting. This is a hybrid meeting, so there is people online as well. I'm going to call the meeting to order and start off with the land acknowledgement. And we respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which includes Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. The Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaties First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of the lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Our next item on the agenda is a moment of silent reflection, and this is for council and staff to quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we represent. So just a moment of silent reflection. Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move into cell phones. Just please turn your cell phones off or place them on vibrate so they don't disturb the meeting. And I'll remind council of declaration of pecuniary interest. If it arises, declare it then, please. And so we have minutes here from the special council meeting December 16th and the regular council meeting December 17th. I'll look for a motion that we receive those minutes. Moved by Councillor Clement. Seconder, Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, I'm going to look for a motion that we go into the public meeting with regards to development charges. So if somebody would like to move that, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. So, so we have two delegations with regards to the development charges, and the first one here is Byron Tan with Watson Associates. Welcome, Byron.
Good morning, Worship. Good morning, Council, staff, members of the public. Pleasure to be here again today. I feel like I've been here almost every other month, which is a pleasure to come visit. So as you had mentioned, today we'll the mandatory public meeting presentation under the Development Charges Act. Just as a preface, I mean, we have been working with staff over the past year and amongst yourselves as well. It's been a pleasure to do this process, and we are now coming to a close. And part of this meeting will be to solicit input from the public, answer any questions where possible, and no decisions are to be made today. That is at a later date during the council's consideration of the bylaw. So, go ahead. Please. So a little bit of the agenda for today, provide you a little bit of an overview of the process and timelines. I know you as a council have already seen quite a number of these slides already. However, this is more for the benefit of the public to be able to see what portions of the study, were conducted, what are we presenting today, as well as the draft rates that are to be considered again during the council consideration of the bylaw. So as part of today, I'll provide you a little bit of a process, a little bit of an overview of the Development Charges Act, a cursory review of the legislative changes. I'm not going to go through history lesson and every single bill. However, we'll be here more so for the highlights of what we are considering. That's part of your draft bylaw. And then we'll go into the proposed policies that are going to be contained within the draft bylaw, which is part of the background study that was released in late December of last year. And then we'll go into just some of the specifics with the study, with the growth forecast, again, the draft rates, and then, as we end off with any presentation, a survey of how the municipality stacks up with respect to your development charges, compared to comparators within the area, or at least similar types of municipalities in similar size. And as I said, there's going to be questions from the public or from yourselves. Typically if there's a question during the meeting, it's a good segue into the next slide. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to answer any questions at the end. So in terms of the timelines, I mean, we started working with the township back in April 2023. As you recall, I provided a kickoff meeting, with yourselves as well as members of staff. And through that process, we ended up working with the different departments within the municipality in order to gather the data, take a look at your capital budgets, capital needs relative to the growth forecasts that was drafted and put together based on the information we received either from your planners, from the county, or any other planning document. Over that past year, we also undertook a lot of the DC calculations, creation of policies, and as you can see within the background study, a draft bylaw. We've been to council and presented on numerous occasions. So we had a council presentation on November 5th. To keep you apprised of, the draft findings of the study. And then on December 17th, where we layered on, if you recall, the wastewater calculations, again, based on the information that we had received from your engineering consultants. We did release the background study on December 20th, and we're now here today for the mandatory public meeting. We are also considering council's consideration of the bylaw, which is scheduled for February. I will be working with staff to figure out exactly what date that'll be. But we could pass, council could consider a bylaw anytime, essentially post February 21st or February 20th, because that'll be 60 days from when we release the background study. So you can pass a bylaw anytime after that, that date. Next slide. So just for the benefit of the public, so the purpose of development charges is to recover for growth-related capital costs, that a municipality would incur. And it's typically associated with residential and non-residential growth within a municipality. So as you grow, you may need some new infrastructure. If it's growth-related, then development charges are a revenue tool that is provided by the province for you to be able to collect, DC revenues to help pay for this new infrastructure. These capital costs would be in addition to what you would typically require a subdivision to build and construct on your behalf. So typically, if you are building a subdivision, you may require them to build the local roads, sidewalks, streetlights, etc. And then once the subdivision is built out, or at least gets to a certain stage, then you would assume all those works. And then you would now be responsible for life cycle asset management and maintenance. So the DC is meant to capture everything above and beyond that. So really more your collector roads, arterial roads, sidewalks, maybe perhaps on one of your main streets, or anything external to a subdivision where it wouldn't be a local cost. And as I mentioned, municipalities are empowered via the Development Charges Act from the province to be able to impose these charges via a bylaw. And prior to passing a bylaw, we must go through this process of undertaking the background study in order to document all of the different steps and policies that make up the bylaw. So when we undertake a development charge background study, typically just looking at it from a high level, we take a look at all of the documents that are available, from the township or any municipality. So the main things we look at is, obviously the official plans or any planning documents, because that sets the stages to, what type of growth and development will actually occur within the municipality. From there, we also work with the planning staff to be able to look at building permit activity, anything in the development application pipeline. Is something draft approved? Is something still, at the review stage? So we kind of plan out exactly how much growth will occur within the municipality over a set period of time. From there, we then take a look at any documents that would help inform the capital program that would support that growth forecast. So you may have maybe a roads master plan or a parks and rec master plan. In that particular case with wastewater, you engage with an engineering firm to determine, the type of capacity that would be required in order to, allow growth to occur beyond a certain point. So that's something that we also included and reviewed as part of the background study process. And really, at the end of the day, we take all that information, working with the township, and putting it all in a model and into the calculations to then try to determine what level of development charges are appropriate in order to pay for this infrastructure that would be required to allow for growth to occur. Slide. So really just this triangle here just kind of summarizes what I had said. So when you're growing and there's new population and employment coming into a municipality, then typically there's infrastructure and servicing needs that would be required, or something that the municipality would like to undertake in order for that growth to occur. And development charges really are a revenue tool to be able to help achieve that goal. If a municipality does not have development charges, as you have not had prior to this consideration, then really your only recourse to help build those infrastructure needs are tax rates, property taxes, water, wastewater rates, reserves, user fees, grants if you can secure them, etc. But really, if you look at that right-hand side, that is really now accessing funds from your existing residents and businesses. The purpose of development charges is that the fees are coming from new homes or new, development of non-residential, buildings. And it's those revenues that are helping to service that infrastructure need. So a little bit of offsetting it from, having to increase, let's say, your tax rates in order to pay for a brand new road. Slide. So just as just a quick overview, I'll leave this for for review of the public. But essentially, the methodology for calculating the DC, we've summarized it into 6 bullets. But really, the Development Charges Act has over 80 clauses and hundreds of subclauses. It makes for great nighttime reading. But really looking at the methodology, the main thing is we identify the amount, type, and location of growth. As I mentioned, where are you growing? What are you growing by? Is it a single family home, a townhouse, an apartment? What type of non-res, industrial, commercial, institutional, etc. From that growth, we then identify the servicing needs to accommodate that growth. So, for example, maybe if you're growing by, 5,000 people, well, for every 1,000 people, you want to ensure that you have, 2 or 3 hectares of parkland. Well, in order to do that, well, how much now do you need in order to develop that parkland so that you can program it with playgrounds, swing sets, splash pads, etc. So number 2 then says, well, we need to service that growth based on what your master plans and what council's directions are. Number 3 then says, well, in order to service that growth, what type of capital do we need? So if we need parks and recreation, well, number 3 then says, well, we should have splash pads, or we should have an arena, or we should have a playground. So number 2 just says we need parks and recreation. How you achieve that is up to you based on the, your directive and, what type of capital you'd like to include in order to provide that service. And then once we identify those capital costs, there are a number of deductions that we must undertake. Again, with development charges, it's not full cost recovery. In this particular case, if you are able to secure any grants, maybe from upper levels of government, if you have any subsidies or any other contributions, maybe perhaps a local developer, wants to, provide some funds in order to accelerate a project faster, and then hopefully, it'll help them build their development sooner, then maybe those other contributions need to be recognized in order to not double count the monies that you're already receiving. There's also a benefit to the existing development. So if we are building something and there is clearly a benefit that would, assist or, take care of an existing issue for the existing community, then that's not growth related. And we would make certain deductions in order to recognize that, because the DCs are only eligible for growth related capital, nothing with replacement or trying to take care of the existing community. If there's any amounts in excess of our 15-year service standard calculation. So if you recall, when we do these modeling work for most of the services, except for wastewater, in your case, we do have to take a look at your 15-year historical inventory of what you've provided in the past. Because the way the DC works is, what you want to collect in the future can be no higher than what you've collected or what you've provided over the last 15 years. And that applies for all services except for water, wastewater, storm, and transit. So, and as I said, we are considering wastewater for the municipality. So that's why I said that calculation does not apply in that case. And then DC reserve funds, if you did have a DC in the past, well, you would have been collecting funds from new growth. Well, if you do have, monies in, your reserve fund or your bank account, then those funds need to be recognized and deducted from the calculations because you already have those funds readily available to help pay for capital. Similarly, though, if you did have any deficits, because let's say you had to take on debt to pay things faster, then those deficits can then be included for recovery because now you have to pay yourselves back for cash flowing those works. So once we make those deductions, then the net costs, it must be allocated between residential and non-residential growth. Typically, we look at it from a population to employment ratio. And then we divide that by the growth forecast as determined in section 1. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview of how those DCs are calculated. So just as a summary, again, just to really highlight the previous slide, when we're doing the calculations, we take the net cost of all of your infrastructure in order to accommodate the growth based on your growth forecast. We divide it by your residential and non-residential growth, and that's how we are calculating your DC either per unit, so per single semi-detached home, per townhome, per apartment, or per non-residential development. And typically it's done on a per square foot, per square meter basis, whatever unit of measure you'd like to use. And that's across the non-residential sector. So what you're seeing on the screen here, this is now the list of 19 services that are eligible under the Development Charges Act. For the purposes of the DC for the township, we did include the ones that are highlighted in this dark green teal color. So you can see here we are including wastewater services related to a highway, which is really your roads, culverts, bridges, public works facilities, fleet, equipment, etc. Fire protection services, library, and parks and recreation. And as I had mentioned in the previous presentations, we are just waiting for your, engineering consultants, to continue their evaluation with the water infrastructure. And at such time, once we're able to identify, the water needs and the growth forecasts related to that, then, we will be coming back and working with the township staff to determine what that water DC would look like, if it's something that you are interested in including as part of the recovery. And in addition just to the services, I'd just like to highlight that the Development Charges Act does allow to include studies as a recovery for DCs. So not only do we include the infrastructure and the capital works associated to these services, but if there's any studies that are related to any of these DC services, then that is something we can include for recovery. So for example, if we were doing a roads project, then there may be an environmental assessment associated with it, or maybe you want to undertake a transportation master plan so that you can examine your whole roads network and what's growth, what's non-growth. Now, typically, when you're undertaking that type of study, you're also looking at existing roads as well, right? So there will be a component of that study that won't be growth related. And if you recall my previous slide, there's that benefit to existing deduction. So maybe that TMP won't be 100% growth. Maybe it's only 50% or something less. But that's something that we would determine based on the scope of those studies. Next slide. Just briefly on the next few slides here, when we are calculating the development charges, as I mentioned, especially for services excluding water, wastewater, storm, and transit, we do have to take a look at that service standard calculation. And you'll see that's highlighted within the background study in Appendix B, I believe, where we are looking at the level of inventory and what the township has provided over the last 15 years. So as I said, that's a mathematical calculation. It has nothing to do with your asset management or how you provide levels of service. This is simply just here's the number of inventory or vehicles or roads that you have divided by your population in each given year. What does that look like on a per capita basis? And then we allocate a market value or replacement cost to these items. And the calculations between those two metrics then gives us a upper limit or a ceiling as to what we can include for forward-looking development charges. So it is just a mathematical equation that's mandated under the Act, and it has nothing to do with any levels of service that you as a council want to undertake or as part of your asset management. Slide. Just as a recap, so when we are looking at your capital costs, there's a number of items that we can include for recovery. And again, all of this is documented within the background study. So what we can include as part of the capital costs is, we can include land, improve land, acquire, lease, construct, improve buildings, including the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that are located within the building. We can include equipment and rolling stock, so vehicles as AKA. We can also include the capital component of a lease. So just because you don't own a building or a vehicle or equipment, if you're still providing the service, we can include the capital component of those lease agreements, because it's the same thing as whether you're renting it or you're going to buy that particular item and then just own it outright. You're still providing the service to the community. So that's something that we can include within the development charges study. For libraries, they're not very functional without any circulation materials. So that's something that we can include within the DC as well. I already mentioned about the studies. And additionally, too, if you are taking on any debt financing for any particular projects, as long as it's growth related, we can include the interest costs that's associated with it. So it's not just the principle of the actual construction of the infrastructure. Again, you guys debt finance 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however long it goes out. The financing piece is eligible for DCs as well. With respect to the growth forecasts, this was a recent change over the last 7 years. But we can use any planning horizon for the DC, except for transit, which is limited to 10 years. So I believe within your background study, we've stuck to a 10-year planning horizon, and that's because that's the known capital needs that we have. And then as well, we are also working with, the planning information that was provided to us, not only by the township, but also the county. And, the 10 years is what's currently, at this time. We may include costs that's either authorized by council, so maybe through your capital budgets, etc., or proposed, to be incurred. Again, because the DC is over a longer period of time, some of these items may not be within your capital program. So it's something that we can include. However, it's still up to council to have to pass your budgets every year and approve these budgets on an annual basis. And then as well, just the last part on this sentence, it could be also incurred, those costs can also be incurred by others on behalf of the municipality. So you don't have to actually, provide the service directly. If you are, let's say, I'll just give an example, maybe you have a cost sharing agreement with your neighbors, to the west, in Asheville, Norwood, but it's something that's a DC related item. Then any payments that you are providing to them, that's providing a capital, benefit to the municipality, can be included in the DC as well, because you're just asking, you're providing the funds to another provider to undertake it on your behalf. So just because you're not doing it yourselves internally, doesn't mean that it's not eligible. Again, these are the items that we have to work with staff in order to figure out the nuance. And just lastly on this page, you'll see that the first part of the capital costs is highlighted in orange. Under Bill 23, they did propose that certain land for some services may eventually be ineligible under the DC. However, there's been no talks or there's been no mention by the province as to what services those may be. So it's kind of left as a bullet point within the Development Charges Act that this could occur if the minister and the province says so, but nothing has occurred. So at this time, we are still including land within your development charge background study, but we are monitoring this. So if there's any ineligible capital that will be deemed, then this is something we'll have to figure out if there's any transitionary rules, if there's any adjustments that need to be undertaken. Next one. So there are some limitations on the capital. Even though we can acquire land, we can't acquire parkland. You do have the powers under section 42, 51, and 53 of the Planning Act in order to achieve your parkland dedication or cash in lieu of parkland to be able to buy parkland. So that's something where, in order to not double dip, the Development Charges Act is not allowed to purchase parkland, with DCs. The capital has to be significant. So in terms of useful life, vehicles and equipment have to meet the test of 7 years or longer. So if it's something that's, you replace every 3 or 4 years, then typically, again, that's something that's not really a significant capital item under the Development Charges Act. Therefore, that's not eligible for recovery. And then computer equipment that's not integral to the delivery of the service. I'll use an example. If you're looking at, let's say, a library, the computer equipment, by, let's say, the librarian or her staff or their staff, that would not be eligible, for DCs. However, if it's computer equipment that, is out in the public so that, the public can use the terminals for internet access for use, that is eligible because that's integral to the delivery of the library service. The way the DC deems it is, well, the staff, they could still do their work, just they don't need that computer. Again, a little bit of a nuance there, but it is something that we are mindful of. And then, as I mentioned already about that removal of land, which is still not in effect. Again, just as a cursory overview on the legislation, I'm not going to go through this to gory detail. Slide. But really, since the inception of the development charges, prior to that, its previous life was under the Planning Act for lot levies, for some of you that may recall. Under the Development Charges Act, started in 1989, and then our current act that we deal with today is from 1997, which actually was passed eventually in 1999. And since that time, there's been 9 amendments to the legislation. All of these amendments have, dealt with policy changes, capital changes, calculation changes, etc. But all of these items have been incorporated as part of your background study. And I'll just touch upon just a couple of changes really, and it's dealing with the last 2-3 years, which starts from Bill 23. So if we just go to the next slide. Something that, is really prevalent right now, especially for most municipalities, is this notion of affordability. So as part of your development charges background study and bylaw, we've added additional exemptions because they are now mandatory to include with respect to these affordable housing definitions. So you'll see within the screen here that there's some additional DC exemptions that all bylaws now must adhere to. So if you have any inclusionary zoning units, which doesn't apply for the township, but really is more the GTA, those would be exempt. Nonprofit housing, those are now fully exempt as well from DCs. So if someone's building a nonprofit house as defined under the act, they don't have to pay. Additional residential units, so a single family home, they can intensify, add 2 additional apartments, not have to pay a DC on those. Affordable housing, so whether it's owned or rental, there are some criteria which I'll show you in a subsequent slide. But essentially, if a house is considered affordable under the rules of the DCs, then the owner and the developer do not have to pay development charges on those units. And then we have attainable housing as well. That's not defined and not currently enforced yet. There is a vague definition within the act that says, it must be sold at arm's length. But that's it. So that's something that we are still waiting on regulations on. We've written it within the draft bylaw. However, it's only going to take into effect, when the province actually announces, what these really are. You'll see within the rest of the screen, I'll just kind of go through it briefly. But there's also rental housing discounts. So if you have a purpose-built rental building where there's 4 units or more, you get a discount based on the number of bedrooms. So a 15% discount on a 1-bedroom, a 20% discount on a 2-bedroom, 25% discount on 3 bedrooms or larger. For the larger municipalities or those that used to collect DCs for social housing, that's now been removed, so that's ineligible. I already mentioned about the potential removal of land in the future. The mandatory phase-in, so this doesn't apply anymore, but when Bill 23 was first released, we had to phase in your DCs. So let's say you passed the charge of $10,000. Well, at most that you can collect in the first year is 8,000. So you have to drop it by 80%, and then it can go up by 5% every year thereafter. That's been removed. I think there was enough discussions through the province, that, it was really just something that municipalities, just especially those high growth ones, they couldn't afford to have to fund that 20% from taxes or, water and wastewater rates. Are some changes to the maximum interest rates. So if you do have a site plan or zoning bylaw amendment application that comes from, let's say, one of your planning applications, then the development charges are actually frozen for up to 18 months. And through that freezing of that DCs, whatever the DCs are determined at the time of that application, you are allowed to add on interest. Because you can't change the DCs, there is still some opportunity cost, because if you would have collected the DCs now, you could have invested it to help pay for infrastructure. So you are allowed to impose an interest rate on those rate freezes. But it is based on the average prime rate plus 1 percentage point. For the treasurer, you have to allocate the funds that you collect from water, wastewater, or services related to a highway, which is 60% of the amount that you collect. You don't have to spend it, but you have to say that I am earmarking these funds for these projects in the future. And then your bylaw can be extended up to 10 years now from an expiry date perspective. Slide. Just briefly, Bill 134, all that did was provide an additional definition for affordable units. So historically, when you looked at Bill 23, what's considered affordable is if the units or the building is less than 80% of the average market value or average rent. Bill 134 essentially said, well, no, let's look at income as well, not just the purchase price of the home. So you can see here, it's considered affordable if the rent is less than 30% of the 60th percentile within a particular municipality, or if it's an owned unit, it's 30% of the 60th percentile income. And I'll show you what those thresholds are for the township. And then lastly, with Bill 185, as you can see there, this was just passed in the summer of 2024. So we did remove the mandatory phase-ins. We can now include studies again as part of the calculations. I told you about that rate freeze. So that's now 18 months. Prior to that, it was 2 years. And then we also have a process for amendments, which doesn't apply to the township because you didn't have a DC bylaw. But the big one was the modernizing of the public notices. So if you don't have a local newspaper, this is just under the Planning Act, Development Charges Act, etc. You can now publish on your website. So, which was key because everywhere always said newspaper, which was pretty a struggle for a lot of smaller municipalities. So just coming to a head of the presentation. So just these last few slides with the proposed policies. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, when we're doing the development charge background study as well as the calculations, I'll say this again, it's not full cost recovery. Typically with municipalities, you'll probably get somewhere within the 60 to 70, 75% range of recoveries at the end of the day when you're actually implementing a DC bylaw. Because there's a number of mandatory exemptions, and a number of intensification allowances and discounts that you have to provide, which really limits, what you can collect for. But again, at the same time, it's still revenues that help pay for new infrastructure. So just as I'll just mention the first bit and then the rest I believe I've already mentioned. But, if you do have an upper tier and lower tiers, kind of like yourselves, if the county were to build a facility, they don't pay the local DC. Likewise, if you build, you don't pay a county DC, right? So there is that relationship between the two-tiered governments. And then school boards, higher on the pecking order, they're provincial, they don't pay a municipal DC. Industrial buildings, they're allowed to expand their footprints up to 50%, and they don't have to pay a DC. Now, within your bylaw, we did draw the line in the sand, so it's a one-time exemption because you don't want someone coming with 100,000 square foot building, pulling a building permit to go to 150, not pay a DC. And then the next year, pulling a building permit to add 75,000 to go to 225, not pay a DC, so on and so forth in perpetuity. So it is a one-time exemption. If you did have any university lands within a municipality, they'd be exempt from DCs if there's any developments on them. And then, as I mentioned with the other ones, you have the intensification clauses of adding up to 2 apartments, the nonprofit, affordable, etc. So I'm not going to repeat that. In terms of discretionary exemptions, so these are ones that, council has the ability to add or subtract if you so choose with respect to your draft bylaw. The ones in the prior slide, those are mandatory. You must provide those exemptions. These ones here, so you may reduce the DC in whole or in part, depending on your mandates. And you can do it whether by type or by class. So for example, you can, by type, maybe you want to exempt, places of worship, churches. Or by class, maybe you just want to exempt, industrial completely, or even, or you can reduce it like 50%, 25%. It truly is up to council to make that decision. You can phase in the charge over time. So maybe you're going from, nothing to something. Maybe you want to phase it in, just to assist with the transition. And then lastly, with redevelopment credits, if you do have any facilities or buildings and they want to be redeveloped, there is a mechanism within the Development Charges Act for them to not pay a DC. So for example, knock on wood, my house burns down, I should be allowed to, rebuild it within a set period of time, typically 5 years, and then not pay a DC because I'm just rebuilding what's already there. Likewise with redevelopment, maybe I have a single family home and I want to knock it down and build 3 townhouses. Well, the credit would be based on a calculation. So let's assume that, a single family home is $10,000 in the DC and maybe a townhouse is $5,000. So if I'm knocking down that house, then I get a $10,000 credit and I'm building 3 townhouses, that's $15,000, 3 times 5,000. So since I have a $10,000 credit, it's the 15 grand payable minus the 10. So really as a builder, I'm only paying the 5,000 net because I'm adding that, that 3rd townhouse, whereas the 2 are free because of that single family home. And then this also works between residential to non-residential and non-res to res. It's the same calculation. So through working with staff, we did put 3 different exemptions, discretionary exemptions for council's consideration. Again, this is something that you can still change, prior to the passage of the draft bylaw. But we did put in places of worship, farm buildings, and this is truly like, the bona fide farming operations, not the house. So, I know typically with farms, there's also a residential component, but this is just the farm buildings. And then hospitals as well, which is typically common in a lot of municipal bylaws for exemptions. Next slide. And then, as I mentioned with the affordable exemptions, so these are now in place and you have to, provide any exemptions that are considered affordable. I'll park attainable because as I said, that's not existing right now. But with respect to the township, if you see on the right-hand side, a building is considered affordable. So let's say for rent, if the monthly rent within that affordable unit is for a bachelor or studio is $877 per month. For a 1-bedroom, it's $1,173, and then a 2-bedroom and larger, it's $1,280 per month. So if that unit can prove to the municipality that their monthly rent is within this threshold, then it's considered affordable. They don't have to pay a DC. With respect to an owned unit though, private purchase, the unit, any unit type, whether single, townhome, or apartments, they have to be less than $301,800. So if the purchase price is less than the $301,800 within the township, it's considered affordable. And these numbers are from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So this is published annually by the province. So it's not something that we determine. This is provided by the province.
You kind of answered it there, but I remember to say it's something they review yearly or on a regular basis, because neither of those numbers are achievable even in our community, right? Like I know people are just looking for 2-bedroom apartments and they're listed at 2,000, 2,500 in our community, not Peterborough. So I think some of that, I know not you, but whoever does it, it needs to be updated, right?
That's correct.
If it's going to be used.
So this is something that, as I said, so I believe my understanding of the regulations is that it will be published every year because this is something you have to monitor. And the reason for that is when you provide, let's assume that, you know, there's a reasonable number and someone meets the threshold of getting an affordable unit, they don't pay the DC. Well, you as a municipality have to enter into a 25-year agreement with that, entity. And we're not sure exactly how that proceeds. Is it, you know, tied to the land? Is it tied to the owner, et cetera? But the moment that within that 25 years, it's no longer considered affordable because the rent is beyond the certain threshold, or maybe they sold the property and they sold it now beyond the affordable owned unit amount, then there is going to be recourse for the township or any municipality to then claw back the DCs because say, well, you're no longer meeting the affordable criteria over a 25-year period. So this is something that you would have to monitor, and if there's any changes to the rent or if there's a change of ownership, then that's where you have to enact the policies within that agreement. Now, having said that, you know, as you had mentioned, Councillor, you know, this is published by the ministry. And my understanding is they are working with, I believe, entities such as CMHC or, you know, some other housing initiative to determine these thresholds. But keep in mind, this is not also just based on housing sales, but it's also based on income, right? So that's why the main thing here that's determining these numbers is that 30% of the 60th percentile. So they look at every single municipality and say, what's the average income within your municipality? Who's at that 60th percentile range? And then of that, they do a calculation of, well, based on their income, 30% of their income potentially could go to these rents or ownership numbers monthly. And that's how they were able to get these.
Which once again, not directed at you, but
Yes.
is discriminatory, right? So, and we're trying to get it from whoever, but just because somebody has a little bit more money, I don't know necessarily we should be taking money out of their pocket, right? So.
Councillor Fleming.
Mayor Martin, so Byron, is this based, do they take comparisons of our township versus say Marlborough, North Court? Like, are they comparing us with others or strictly based on the fact sheet for this township?
Your worship, a great question. My understanding is they look at it by municipality. So, you know, the income from another municipality has no bearing on your numbers.
Okay.
So, you know, of the, 444 municipalities in Ontario, they do provide, you'll see, like, if you go on the website, they actually provide, individual numbers for every single municipality by unit type. So they provide both ratios. They provide it based on income, and then they provide it based on that 90% of the, if you see the last part, the 90% of the average. So they provide the two. And which one's lesser? Is it less based on income or is it less based on purchase price? And it's not always income that's the lesser. I mean, there are some municipalities where, they have quite a bit of income. So therefore, the purchase price, that 90% is actually the lower of the two. And that's what will be presented on the right-hand side. Next slide. So just lastly, as part of the DC background study, we also include a local service policy. You may have recalled I mentioned this before, but under Section 59 of the Act, you can't impose any additional levies that you don't clearly identify within the Development Charges Act or any of your policies and agreements, with the different landowners. So really what this local service policy, it's an appendix within the background study. It just itemizes what you currently do as a municipality. The expectation is when developers or builders are building, a subdivision, right? You expect them to build the local roads and the local sidewalks, street lights, but then you'll also recognize that, hey, if it's outside or, if it's something where it'll benefit the broader area, we will include it within the development charges, such as you can see here, for example, arterial roads, let's say, or sidewalks. That's external of the subdivision. We'll put it within the DC, But maybe if it's an internal road or, internal landscaping and, parkland, dedication, that's all the local service policy. That's all the developer's responsibility. Slide. And go. So just last few slides, with respect to the calculations, I've mentioned this on a number of occasions, but our growth forecast right now, we are looking at a 10-year planning horizon. And again, this is based on, your planning documents, the planning application pipeline, as well as the county's information. So we are looking at roughly 612 people over the next 10 years. That's about 100, just under 170 homes. From a non-residential perspective, that's about just over 133,000 square feet of non-res. It's a mix of commercial, industrial, or institutional. And then we have about 121 employees that'll be within that 133,000 square feet. Slide. Now, in terms of the draft development charges, as you can see, based on the services related to highway, the fire, parks and rec, library growth, et cetera, and the wastewater, we are looking at a fully serviced unit, let's say a single or semi-detached home, of $18,088. If you aren't within that wastewater service area that would benefit from that Havelock wastewater treatment plant, then your DCs would be $12,388. So again, it all depends on where you're at within the municipality. And you can see going left to right, the smaller the unit, the lesser the charge, because we do look at it, from occupancy and the number of individuals that potentially will be in the home. So for a townhouse or a multiple, for full services, it'd be $16,307. If you aren't receiving wastewater services and you're on private services, then you're at $11,168. And then you can see we've also provided for apartments, 2+ bedrooms, or 1 bedroom or less. And then from the non-residential standpoint, on a per square foot basis, if you're in the municipal wide, it's $4.45. If you are benefiting from that wastewater infrastructure, then it goes up to $7.97 per square foot. Slide. So the last four slides, really we have the DC survey. Next slide, please. So the first one is the single semi-detached homes. You can see with yourselves, you're just a little bit left to the middle. So other municipalities that are, higher than you would be Cabot-Monaghan, Prince Edward County, Ashford-Norwood, Port Hope, Quincy, Cobourg, Selwyn, and then you have the ones on the right-hand side. Now, keep in mind that some of these municipalities are also updating their DCs. So this is going to be changing. I know, for example, Autonomy, South Monaghan, they'll probably be updating their DCs this year as well. But then keep in mind, some services may not be included for some of these municipalities, right? So some municipalities may not have water or wastewater services. They'll be on private well and septic. And just to interpret the chart for members of the public, the blue is the lower tier, so that'd be yourselves if it's a 2-tiered system, or if it's a single tier, then they're just all blue. The gold, yellowish gold, is an upper tier, so typically Peterborough County or any other counties, that may be on here for the other municipalities. And then the green bar above all of them is the education development charges. So the school boards, both Catholic and public school boards, are allowed to implement a development charge of their own. They have a different piece of legislation, so it's a different calculation altogether. You as a municipality being a lower tier, your job is to collect the upper tier as well as the EDCs. But in this case, if you are going to be implementing a lower tier DC, then you would collect all three. Next slide. In terms of the commercial per square foot, you can see you're a bit to the center or just slightly right to the center, but almost in the middle. You can see there is just one outlier. It's Prince Edward County. They do have a special area in Wellington where they are trying to recover for I believe it's a wastewater infrastructure. And because of the growth within that area relative to the costs, you can see that their charge per square foot went through the roof. So I know it's something that they are monitoring, but right now that is a charge that they are implementing as part of an approved bylaw. And then you can see all the other municipalities within this survey. And then lastly, with the industrial on the next slide, similarly, there's no upper tier or EDCs for yourselves, but you can see for your industrial charge, Prince Edward County is still number one. But then, to the left of you, you got Port Hope, Quincy West, Hamilton Township, Greater Napanee, Selwyn, Asheville-Norwood, et cetera. So quite a number of municipalities now once it gets to the non-residential to the left of you. Next slide. And this one I just like to point out, and again, this is something that's subject to change. But one thing I'd like to look at is what is the DC relative to, say, the purchase price of the home? I think this is a good metric to measure for most municipalities, especially on that list. So you can see, like, for example, yourselves, with the lower tier, the upper tier, as well as the education DCs, it's typically going to be around that $33,500. However, the average purchase price, according to the bulletin that's published by that Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, says that your average purchase price of a single family home here is $660,000. Now, not sure if that is still accurate in today's market lens, just because the last time I looked at realtor.ca, most homes right now, it's hard pressed to see anything sub 800,000 for a single family home. So based on that, this is saying that, the percentage price of the home relative to a DC is about 5.1%. But then you can see others, for example, like your neighbors in Asheville-Norwood, their DCs are just under 39,000. But according to this, their purchase price of a home is less than yours at 620,000 for a single family home, which again, this is where I use this more as a snippet based on what the province is looking at based on their bulletin. However, I would always caution and say, well, we should really update that third column, with the average purchase price, because if you actually look at, new builds, is it actually still coming around this amount? Because I am surprised that, within this area, even like Cavan Monaghan at 900,000 for an average purchase price of a home. Last time I looked, by like the Kawartha Downs area in Millbrook, they're all, just around the $1 million mark. So I think this is, it may have been a snapshot, maybe like, a couple of years ago, but then moving into their 2024 bulletin. So again, I'm not sure what information goes within their assessment, but, just to show you that, on average, within this area, within the catchment of these surveyed municipalities, it's around $730,000, dollars, but, you're under that average in terms of the average purchase price. Next slide. So again, that concludes my presentation. As I said, we've completed the mandatory public meeting today. Happy to take any questions or, listen to public comments. But really the next step now is for council's consideration of the bylaw. We're aiming for February, but if there's a date subsequent to that, I'm more than happy to help implement that process where required.
Thank you, Byron. And it's a really complicated thing. I've been involved in a lot of discussions around development fees with the county and what they include and what they don't include. So it's just not cut and dry. There's a lot to it. And even when it comes down to the percentage of the value of the properties in our area, one of the things that skews it is we have a lot of waterfront. We have 10 lakes in the area that are all well over $1 million. And I'm sure that's going to make the numbers look a little different than when you start including within the village. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But open it up to council.
Yeah, just a quick question on something that Byron can answer, but the one thing that has me trouble is when I have to see this graph here, I guess we're just above middle in terms of the last graph, page 49, sorry. But when I look at the other municipalities that are either the ones below us, definitely the ones that are above us, those are all communities that I see growth happening now in. So Norwood, Sterling, Rawdon, those places have been booming for 4 or 5, 10 years in some cases. We're not there yet. So what I'm concerned about is if we're trying to spur growth here, should we maybe be coming in at a lower level? And then as we, as the growth starts, then obviously we can tick this up. I'm just worried about kind of a sticker shock in that a developer is going to look at Havelock, look at whether it be Marmora. Ours is 33,000 and Marmara's at 15,000. If I'm the developer, it's not a hard decision for me to make, right? I'm just that's what I'm worried about, because just for myself, and I think some of council's of agreement is we're trying to spurn growth here. So while we want to obviously, get money back and use these DC charges to help us in the future, we need to start the growth. So like, we can come up with these numbers, but if there's no growth, we're not getting any of this money anyway. So that's kind of the balance I'm looking for here in terms of the number. To me, it seems a little high. I understand what we're trying to do, but as I said, all these other communities that have these costs already have development underway, if not, completed in many, like Norwood, Sterling, the same way. They've had major developments going on there for, as I said, 5 or 10 years, right? We're trying to get that going here, and I'm just worried about if that would inhibit, or discourage developers from coming to Havelock. So I don't know if you can comment on that or if you've had experience with that. So
Yeah, through your worship, great question and great observation. I mean, as I mentioned, some of these municipalities, I know they'll be undertaking a DC study, in the coming future, just because in some of their bylaws, they were passing it back in like 2019, 2020, when there was a big DC rush. And, if you look at the timeline, prior to the DC's extending the 10 years, the first iteration of the development charging was 1999. So if you think about it, it's kind of like every 5-year cycle. That last one would have been 2019. So they would have updated now, or if they haven't yet, maybe they're off cycle. So with respect to their DCs, I mean, I'd have to take a look at, the actual specifics as to what's included within their calculations. But typically, for some municipalities, if there are a large number of developments that are occurring, then if you think about it, if our calculations are, I have, $5 or $10 million worth of roads I need to do, but I'm only dividing it by 170 homes, that's a much larger number versus, well, I only have this much road, it's still $10 million, but I'm dividing it by 500 homes or 1,000 homes. So, there is that case as well where, depending on their circumstance, maybe that's what is leading to a lower charge. Keep in mind as well, there are some municipalities I did mention that they are predominantly on private services, so they don't have that water and wastewater piece. And that's really the 4 main ones that I always find within development charges that are really, the most expensive when it comes to the charges, or at least what makes up the charges is the services related to highway, which are roads and related, water, wastewater, and parks and recreation. Parks and recreation, I've even seen some municipalities where it even trumps the roads because they just want to be able to build parks because they already have the infrastructure for roads, for water and wastewater. Now coming back with that comment with the DCs, as that potential inhibitor, or something that municipalities look at in terms of purchase price of a home. This is something where we've been monitoring this over the last almost 40 years now, even before development charges were a thing, and it was still lot levies. And what we found was, interestingly enough, the highest DCs are the ones with the highest growth within Ontario, period. So if you look at, and obviously it's not a one glove fits all. There are other circumstances to this based on access to a 401 corridor, access to goods movement. But if you look at, the major municipalities within, and if you look at just starting with Toronto and then going out in the periphery with the Durham regions, York regions, Peel, and then going into Halton and then Niagara and then, Waterloo region, et cetera. The highest growing municipalities, all of them are in the top 50 of, development charges within Ontario. And why is that? Because they're growing, they need to build the infrastructure. And, if they're growing without it, then it's just an increase in the tax rates, and they're trying to balance where it's going. Now, in terms of, going outside of that periphery and now going into, Peterborough County, Northumberland County, the DCs here are, less than obviously, the counterparts within that GTA. And I'm not trying to compare you with them, but at the same time, we have noticed that, when we're looking at the development charges, when we're working with, especially just looking at the raw data, when a municipality, let's say, does not have a development charge, or if they have a development charge that's less, like lesser than yours, the purchase price of that home doesn't adjust 1-to-1. Because really, if a purchase price home is $700,000, you have a $30,000 DC. The moment you remove that $30,000 DC, that $700,000 is not going down to $670,000. that other cost gets accumulated or transitioned into, maybe perhaps, earnings or, some other type of, other things now that they could offer to the client, or the purchaser, enhancements, better countertops or something to upsell to get it back to the 700 amount. Because that was the price anyways to begin with. And that's but again, it's not something where it's a one glove fits all. There are different circumstances. But what I have seen is those communities that, had basically removed their development charges, there wasn't really a drastic change in their growth relative to others that just kind of stuck with it. But it just happens to be based on market factors. Where are the developers building and where are the hotspots? And again, the main hotspot right now, that we notice is if you're by a 400 series highway, that's easily, a big growth factor, immediately. Or if there's something that, like you offer, such as, a destination such as cottage country type of deal, that obviously spurs growth as well. So there's intangibles that add to that. But in terms of, removing it, again, I haven't really seen a one-to-one correlation of growth occurring. Now, having said that, I did mention within the presentation that council has, the ability to amend the charge as you see fit. What I provide or what our firm provides and, through staff and the calculations is just, here's the amount based on the capital program you provided and the growth. You can implement a DC anywhere from 0 up to that maximum amount. Now, keep in mind, if you're still undertaking these works, so you still have to build that $2 million upgrade of a road or whatever the case may be, but you decide to limit your DCs, let's say by 25%. So you want to implement, of that 18,000, you want to implement maybe $14,000, just, to drop it a bit. Then every time someone pulls a building permit for a single family home, that $4,000 difference, you have to fund from property taxes now. Because you were still gonna have to build that road and you still need $2 million at the end of the day, but you're only collecting, 1.5 million, let's say. So if you still have to build, you have to figure out where that 500,000 is gonna come from, and it comes from property tax.
Understood, and if I'm dealing in kind of an urban setting, so this is what I'm thinking with our municipality, you kind of have two different things, as the mayor said, we've got a town where some of these probably apply or should apply, because we're gonna have to rebuild infrastructure. Then we've got the lakes and stuff where the guy living outside of Cordova, if he builds a house on an old woodlot there, they're not gonna be a lot for us to do, right? It'll be more the county, because he's living on a county road. I'm just saying in terms of costs that we're accruing, we're not gonna have to build a new road. Can you have two different charges? You know what I mean? Can you have two different charges in your municipality for, say, like an urban and a rural? Like, do municipalities do that?
Yeah, through your worship, municipalities can slice and dice the bylaw as they see fit. Typically, those are called the area specific charges. So, you would have to take a look at, well, what's the growth forecast within that area versus, another area. Now that is a little bit more onerous because now you have to take a look at, well, what's the growth within just Havelock versus, let's say, the external, in the rural community, versus looking at more on a, municipal wide, which is, here's the numbers, but it is doable.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, any other questions for Byron? All right, well, thank you, and yeah, lots to digest here, so thank you. So next on the listed delegations, we do have Jeff Menzies here. Motion to receive.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you very much for giving me this chance to speak. I only have 10 minutes, so I just typed everything right here. So there's a lot of information that I want to get out there. And then maybe we can discuss some of the questions you might have after I'm done. For you that don't know who I am, I'm Jeff Menzies. I own and operate Menzies Developers. We specialize in residential development projects. We have experience developing in Havelock and in Norwich. I also own JDM Design Works, where we supply design work and project management for industrial projects all over the world. We've been involved in residential development in the area since 2016. Over the past 9 years, we worked on projects in Havelock and Norwich. During that time, we learned a lot about the housing market in the area. Although there's only 10 kilometers between Havelock and Norwich, the interests of Peterborough developers and builders and GTA developers and builders drastically drop off after Norwood. One example of this is when Havelock went out for tender in 2017 for the 7 service lots on Smith Drive. All the Peterborough builders were invited to bid and all declined. Another example of minimum interest in Havelock from developers and builders is in 2022 and 2023. During that time, it was a peak for the housing market, specifically in the spring and summer 2022. During that period, developers and builders purchased over 200 acres inside Norwood settlement area. This is equivalent to 1,200 housing units. All of these properties are currently active in development and at different stages in the plan of subdivision process. One of these properties was a 50-acre property that we developed and sold to Holborn. During discussions with multiple developers and builders, none were interested in Havelock, unfortunately. For this same 2-year period, Havelock did have 3 transactions potential for residential development. These included Newton's old property, the Volk subdivision, which is north part of town, and the property at the north end of Mary Street. Since then, none of these owners have submitted plan of subdivision. As of today, correct me if I'm wrong, but I am unaware of any residential projects in Havelock with current plan of subdivision approval. In the past, Havelock has definitely struggled to attract developers and builders to our township. Without having a municipal development charge, now with council initiating a background study for a development charge bylaw, my question to council is, how do you think adding a development charge in the amount of $18,088 per housing unit in town is going to entice builders and developers to purchase land in town compared to before when we had no development charge? Also, for a comparison, Norwood's new development charge as of 2023 is $11,734 per single detached house. I fear if HBM passes this proposed bylaw, we will never have residential growth in our settlement area. Municipalities and cities need growth to be sustainable. Without residential growth, the increase in operating costs of the municipality are passed on to the existing taxpayers through property tax increases. With regards to increase in property taxes, our building department is supposed to be self-sustainable through building permit revenue. Instead, a large portion of the increase in property taxes each year is going towards subsidizing our building department in an amount of $250,000 or more per year. We need residential growth to support our building department. And it's a lot of growth we need to make this difference. I'm talking about 50 new houses per year. I believe our building department to be self-sustainable would require 100 new houses built per year. This is a huge challenge for rural municipalities. And that's why a lot of nearby municipalities do not have their own building department. Instead, they use Building Inspection Service Board, for instance. These municipalities include Marmarin Lake, Madoc, Sterling, Tweed, etc. These townships do not have any financial liability from their building department. I think we can all agree that we need residential growth in our settlement area to keep property taxes low, keep our building department, and maximize municipal infrastructure before we look at implementing a development charge. There are many other advantages to residential development, including job creation, injecting money into our local economy through construction, and new people, residents moving to our town to shop locally. Looking at the Development Charges Act, under determination of development charges, there's 3 points I wanted just to quickly talk about. The anticipated amount, type, and location of development for which development charges can be imposed must be estimated. The increase in the need for service attributable to the anticipated development must be estimated for each service to which the development charge bylaw would relate. And number 3, in paragraph number 3, the estimate under paragraph 2 may include an increase in need only if the council of the municipality has indicated that it intends to ensure that such an increase in need will be met. The background study is very vague when it comes to determining anticipated growth estimates. It basically relies on Peterborough County's growth wish list. The reason I say wish list is because county needs X amount of growth, and they determine where that growth hypothetically goes based on a lot of criteria. For instance, they can't make Havelock grow by 169 housing units over 10 years. Urban growth is controlled more at the municipal level. But even at the municipal level, it's challenging to control growth because at the end of the day, you can only build a house on land that you own. And what happens in a lot of rural towns is that land is owned by people not interested in selling or developing. And this is the problem that Havelock has for future growth. The only growth that council can control in Havelock is land owned by the township. This is pretty limited. Township does currently own second phase land on Smith Drive, but has decided not to proceed with the development back in 2019. This would have brought 21 more houses to the market. So how is Havelock going to grow if the township is not willing to develop property they own? And the rest of the development land in Havelock is either not feasible to build on or current landowners are not interested in selling. I would like to request that based on the information that I have supplied today, the council postpone the passing of a development charge bylaw until a better plan is in place that more accurately supports a development charge. I would also like to propose to council that a township creates a growth steering committee to establish an achievable growth plan for our settlement area. This committee should be open to myself, including other township developers and builders, council members, HBM chief building official, planner, economic development officer, and owners of parcels of land in the settlement area that are zoned residential or future development. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, questions or comments?
Great. Thanks very much for the presentation, Jeff. I think you've brought up a lot of things that in private discussions here that we have on council. I know they probably don't make it out to the street, but in terms of land, that's obviously one thing, you know, that I know the mayor's been working on here for a year or two, the procurement of it so we can build some houses. All I can say is we're working on it. I know obviously we're not working at the pace that a lot of people in this community would like, but we are trying. And hopefully in the next year or two, you're going to see some real movement down this avenue. And I'm not talking so much about the DC charges, but I'm talking about future development for Havelock. So I know you probably don't want to hear it, is to hold your breath for a little bit, and hopefully here in the next, as I said, things will change.
I see. I've been hearing that for about 7 years now.
I understand.
And nothing's happening, unfortunately. Are there any developments at any stage of the plan of subdivision in our settlement area?
Yeah. There are, well, our chief building official would answer that better, but yes, there are some.
But which ones are they?
Well,
We can't disclose that.
Can't disclose that. It is public information once you submit for a plan of subdivision through county.
Okay. Well, we can get back to you as we move on, but
Well, you shouldn't have to get back to me because
thank you for your delegation. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, is there any other members in the audience wishing to speak to the development charges? Seeing none. Okay, I'll look for a motion that we go to this public meeting for development charges and we receive, or sorry, I should get a motion to receive the delegations. Yeah, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty, all in favor, and that's carried. And then the next motion would be to move out of the public meeting for development charges. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty, all in favor, and that's carried. All right, so now I've got to get a motion to go into a public meeting for zoning bylaw. Thank you, Byron.
Thanks, Byron.
So that's moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Clement, all in favor, and that's carried. All right, we have one zoning bylaw amendment for Semple, and this is a statutory meeting held under section 39 of the Planning Act. Any person may attend the public meeting and or make verbal or written representation either in support or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Please keep your video off, microphone muted during the meeting until the chair invites you for comments regarding the planning matter. If a person or public body did not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen before the proposed zoning bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body may not be added to the party to the hearing of the appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. If you wish to be notified of the passing of the bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the Township of Havelock-Belmont-Methuen. With that, I'll turn it over to Samantha. I know she's under the weather. Hello, Samantha.
Good morning, Mayor and members of council. I'm just going to share my screen here. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. So this is the first zoning bylaw amendment application for 119 Fire Route 63C. The subject property is located on Oak Lake and owned by Robert and Marcia Semple. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to support the redevelopment of the subject property through the demolition of the existing seasonal recreational dwelling to construct a new residential dwelling unit. The proposed dwelling unit is approximately 131 square meters or 1,412 square feet in size, with attached both sun and covered decks totaling 23 square meters or 247 square feet. The applicants do intend to use the new single detached dwelling as their permanent residence. Therefore, a holding provision will be added to the site-specific zoning to ensure both a road agreement and recommendations that were completed from the EIS as part of a complete application to ensure those two items are both registered on title. The current dwelling has a setback of around 3 meters from the high water mark, and the new dwelling is proposed with a setback of around 4.68 meters or 15.4 feet from the high water mark. This does represent an improvement to the high water mark. However, there were some constraints on the site that limited them to pushing it further back in terms of steep slopes and some high bedrock on the subject lands. In total, the relief from the zoning bylaw currently being requested is to reduce the required front yard setback and the setback from the high water mark from 21.3 meters and 30 meters respectively to 4.68 meters. The application does conform to the County of Peterborough's official plan. We have our official plan and the township's zoning bylaw and is consistent with the provincial planning statement. And in our review and assessment of the application, we do seem that it is conforms to all of the land use planning policies and to be approved. And I can confirm that notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. A mail notice was provided to all homeowners within 120 meters of the subject site, and a property sign was posted on the property.
Okay. Was that it, Samantha?
Sorry, yeah, that was it.
Sorry. Okay. All right then. So I'm gonna go around the room here. The first part of this is I'll be asking 3 times. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition of this application, followed by 3 times anybody wishing to speak in favor. So for the first time, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition of this application? Second time, anybody wishing to speak in opposition? And third time, anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none. Is the applicant here? Okay, welcome. Did you have anything to add to that report or?
No, just that we've gone in great lengths to make sure that we have moved back from the waterway and as Samantha said, that there was several constraints, being hydro lines through the property and existing septic bed that was approved by Peterborough Public Health to continue use. And that's about it. We followed verbatim everything that the township has put forward to us to make this happen.
Okay. All right, so I'll thank you very much then. So for the first time, is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this application other than the applicant? Second time, anybody wishing to speak in favor? And third time, anybody wishing to speak in favor? Okay, I'll open it up to council. Here's the recommendation here. What's your thoughts? Go ahead.
Pretty straightforward. The gentleman told us he did everything he was supposed to, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion to move the staff recommendations, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. So that'll come back. We can deal with the bylaw right now, and while the applicant's here. So there is a bylaw before us with regards to this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, a motion to move out of the public meeting. All right, so that's moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Clement. All in favor? That carried. So we do have a bylaw here. It's bylaw 2025-002 with regards to this application. So let's move the bylaws. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. So thank you. All right then. So I'll get a motion now that we go into the public meeting for committee of adjustment. So with the Deputy Mayor in the chair. So that's moved by Councillor Clement, seconder Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. So
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin and members of the Committee of Adjustment. I'd like to call this public meeting to order and remind the members of the committee of the requirement to disclose any pecuniary interest or general nature thereof if the occasion arises. This public meeting will be held under Section 45 of the Planning Act and its regulations. We'll now have our planner, Samantha, present one minor variance report today. DeFilippo. Samantha?
Perfect. Thank you very much. So yes, this is minor variance application A1724. The subject property at 5566 County Road 46. The subject property is approximately 0.22 acres in size and located on West Twin Lake, accessed off of County Road 46. The purpose of the minor variance application is to permit an existing sleeping cabin that was constructed without a building permit by seeking relief from section 4.1E and section 10.2.1G, having the following effects: reducing the required minimum front yard setback from 6 meters to 0 meters, reducing the required minimum separation distance from another structure from 1.5 meters to 0.73 meters, or around 2 feet, 2.5 feet. And increasing the maximum lot coverage from 15% to 16.2%. The applicant constructed a sleeping cabin on the property without a permit with a ground floor area of approximately 12 square meters, or around 130 square feet, inclusive of the porch, with a height of approximately 3 meters or around 10 feet. The sleeping cabin was previously constructed in an area on the property that was within the high water setback within 15 meters of the wetland. Due to the location of the holding tank on the property, the location of the sleeping cabin was quite limited. The sleeping cabin was then moved to its current location outside of that high water setback outside of that wetland boundary. And it was moved to its current location and replaced an existing wood shed. So as we can see here, just sort of going back on that survey, the site survey confirmed that the sleeping cabin essentially was located directly on the front property line of the road allowance to County Road 46. The minimum front yard setback of 0 meters is requested, whereas like I've said, the 6 meters is required under the seasonal residential zone. So obviously with being in close proximity right on the boundary of the road allowance of County Road 46, Peterborough County was circulated on the application and was actually consulted on the proposal prior to an application being submitted. The Transportation Department did review the proposal and did actually provide a number of conditions of approval that we see on that decision. And those are all based off of Peterborough County's comments. So we did review the application in accordance with the applicable planning legislation and policies, including the provincial planning statement, the official plan, and the zoning bylaw. Planning staff can confirm the application is consistent with Section 45, subsection 1 of the Planning Act, as the application meets the intent of the official plan, meets the intent of the zoning bylaw, is desirable and appropriate, and is relatively minor in nature. Planning staff can confirm that notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. Mail notice was provided to all homeowners within 60 meters of the subject site, and a property sign was posted on the property. As this application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, conforms to the PPS, it is the recommendation of this report that the application be approved. Happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you for the report, Samantha. Is the applicant with us today online?
Sorry, yes, we are.
Hi, could you state your name, please?
Nancy and Enzo DeFilippo.
And did you have anything to add?
No, not really. No.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll proceed. Is there anyone present here today or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Second time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Is there anyone present or online wishing to speak in favor of this application? Second time, anyone wishing to speak in favor? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak in favor? Not hearing anything, I'll open up to the floor for any comments, questions, or motion from the members of the committee. I just have one question quickly before we get started. Samantha, I think it's the last page for the Peterborough County comments. It says septic system is completely on private property. The county is accepting of the statement. However, if determined later any part of the septic system is within the road allowance, an encroachment agreement will be required. Is this underway, or is this going to be completed here sometime soon?
That would be only if it was determined that if it was on the county road allowance. If there is an encroachment agreement required, that would be through the county and the applicants.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I wasn't clear in my question, but when will that be determined? So like, is the county going out to determine whether it's on the road allowance, or who's going to be determining that? And when?
Well, it says in the letter, the site visit, the property owner stated that to county staff, the septic system was completely on private property. So they are accepting of that statement as of right now. So they're saying if it's determined later, they will require an encroachment agreement. But as of right now, they're okay with the septic system being currently where it is, as per the statement provided by the homeowners.
Thank you very much for that, Samantha. So members of the committee, comments, questions? Councilor Doherty, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. A septic and a holding tank considered the same, Samantha?
No, there are different provisions for a holding tank versus a septic.
So does this property have a holding tank or a septic system?
I believe it is a holding tank.
Yes, it is a holding tank.
So I guess I'm a little confused with the septic comment. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. Samantha, like just if there's a holding tank, what's going on with the septic there? Is it being used or is it just an old septic or?
I think that through you, I believe what the county is referring to the septic system is the holding tank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Their language might not just be as appropriate. It should have read holding tank, but in their minds, they're probably thinking septic system is the holding tank.
Okay, thanks very much, Samantha. We got our chief building official just blocked in your travel.
I tried to jump in through Zoom, but it wouldn't let me. So a holding tank is considered a class 5 sewage system. So it's treated the same as a sewage system, just has different setbacks, as Samantha noted.
Thanks very much for Travis. I always learn something when you come in. Thanks very much for that. So members of the committee, good questions. Another question, Councillor. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, through you, Deputy Mayor. So Samantha and I went through this in quite a bit of detail. My big concern was the county conditions, but Samantha's assured me that they has to be completed in 18 months that goes along with this. So I'm quite happy with this. I'll make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion from Councillor Clement to approve. Seconder for that, Mayor Martin. Comments or questions from any other members? If not, all in favor? And that's passed. And that completes our one report for today. So thank you very much for your reports here today, Sam. And I'll just take a motion to adjourn the public meeting and we'll return back to our regular council meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Clement, no problem. And Councillor Flagg, all in favor? That's passed. Aaron?
Okay, so we're back into the regular meeting and I think I'm gonna look for a motion that we take a recess for 10 minutes and before we move into the next part of the meeting. So moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, seconded by Councillor Clement, all in favor. That's carried, so come on back. Okay, so I'll look for a motion to resume the meeting. Moved by Councillor Clement, seconded by Deputy Mayor Webb, all in favor, and that's carried. Okay, we're moving into planning reports, Samantha. So the first planning report here is the stop up and close. Go ahead.
Perfect. I do just have a brief presentation to share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, yep, we can see it.
Perfect. All right, so the purpose of this report is to request council to enact a bylaw, the bylaws in the bylaw section of the agenda, to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the road allowance adjacent to the property having civic address 19 Fire Route 38. Identified as part of road allowance between lots 15 and 16, concession 8 being part 2 on registered plan 45R17709. So at the February 20th, 2024 open council session, a motion was passed to approve in principle for the stop up, closure, and conveyance of the road allowance here, identified as part 2 on this plan. The applicant provided the township with an opinion of value and appraisal, as well as the completed survey, as we can see here. So we do have our municipal road allowance policy and application policy number 2024-06-18. So this policy has been followed. That includes notification of the adjacent landowners and the public. So staff is just requesting authorization and the passing of the bylaw to commence the process for the stop up, closure, and conveyance of the subject property road allowance to the applicant / property owner. These are just a few images just of the area in question. As you can see, the public sign posted on the property 30 days before this meeting was held. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, opening up to council. Any questions? Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Martin, there's other properties on that road. Does that, the stop up and go, did the other property owners do the same thing?
There have been previous, through you, the mayor, there have been previous stop up enclosures along Fire Route 38. But it actually was identified this prior to me joining here, but actually it mostly just extends over to around this garage location. So it's actually identified that I believe the majority of this garage and all of it is actually contained within that road allowance that's being added to the subject property. So although we're seeing the fire route, it is actually mostly a portion of the property that looked like it was on the subject lands, but it was actually just off the side of the fire route. So we're not prohibiting access to anybody else's property along Fire Route 38.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, there is a recommendation here. Good thoughts. Go ahead, Councilor Clement.
Through you, Mayor Martin. So again, Samantha, I dealt with this one. So if you look at the color or the full picture, I think that's a little better. This just shows the road, right, Samantha? The ones in your presentation actually show a little bit better down farther. Anyways, it looks pretty straightforward with the colored pictures that you showed in the fall. I'm on page,
Oh, of the report.
yes, page 138.
Let me see if I can pull that up here. Just 1 second.
Makes, I think, a little clear. So you're talking just there, back up,
Oh, sorry, what page was that?
138,
138.
right? Right
Right
there, right there. So is it just, it's the property you're saying, just that little section beside the garage is what they're looking at?
It is. Why can't I get back here? So it's hard to really show, but this is just more of a sketch that I did on top of our GIS, but is this portion here of the actual road allowance?
So when you look at that, it looks like it could obstruct the corner there. Does it, you know, it might be just the way the drawing's done. I know it's just on a GPS, but
Yeah, this was just more of my overlay on top of the GIS, but this is the accurate. So we can see here this part 2 on this plan, part 245R15508. That was a previous stop up and close on Fire Route 38 as well. So that portion was conveyed to the lands to the south here.
okay.
Well, although this survey doesn't provide an accurate depiction on exactly where the road allowance is, it's my understanding that, or sorry, the actual road of Fire Route 38 is. It's my understanding that this won't prohibit any access to any of the other properties along Fire Route 38. It's just to deal with essentially an encroachment of the garage that was on the road allowance.
Okay. All right, Councilor Jordan.
Through your chair. So how much of the garage or what other buildings or septic or anything are located on part 2, Samantha?
Let me see if I can find that as quickly as I can. Like I mentioned, this was prior to me joining, so I don't know if Travis is in
Yeah, he's here.
council chambers or not. He might be able to provide a little bit more information.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in a previous report for approval in principle, we did have that information on a plan, but I don't have it today. There was I think it was 3 encroachments: the garage, the septic, and the well encroached on that on the road lines.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions around this? So, there's a,
Sorry, let me see. Can you guys see this?
yeah,
Yeah, so this is as well overlaid on top of our GIS, so not 100% accurate, but this is the portion that looks like they're looking at acquiring. And it is to do with the garage and I believe the septic that was located actually on the road allowance, not on their property.
All right, Councillor Flagler, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Martin. Okay, so is the part that they want to purchase, is that now part of the road as well? Like, or do we still have I'm not sure the measurements there.
It's unfortunately, I can't necessarily say exactly because this is just a depiction on our GIS map.
Right.
However, Fire Route 30 is not a road that we provide any maintenance to. So it is a private roadway in a sense. So it would be the same as some previous stop-up enclosures that we've seen.
Is that there?
Okay, Travis is in here and he's.
I see him there.
Okay, so this is what they want here. Going back to the page. Sorry. Remember, okay, so on page 138 again, so Travis, this piece right here, is the road out here and this is what they're looking at?
The roads.
The roads are there,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
So that through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a survey provided as we went through this process to ensure that they were only purchasing land and no portion of that road. So the fire road itself still remains on the unopened road lots.
Okay.
They're not
Okay.
purchasing any of that.
okay,
Honestly, as I said, nobody's gonna lose access.
okay.
All right, we're always leery on pulling up because there is probably 15 cottages past that have to access, so. Go ahead.
Do we not, I don't know if we have a gate there, but I know there's been issues around that road allowance that runs to the lake. Right here. Yeah, so that's not gonna be,
That's an entire separate.
okay.
That's not part of this application.
It's only through you, Mr. Mayor, it's only part two between lots 15 and 16 on the survey as Samantha has up on the screen.
Thank you, thanks.
All right, so. The recommendation is here and the recommendation is that we pass the bylaw to stop up and close and convey part of the road allowance. So. You moved it?
I did.
Okay, by Councillor Clement, seconder. Somebody want a second?
No, that's a second.
You guys second it? Okay, second by Deputy Mayor Webb. Question?
Yeah, but so it's, what is the motion to approve? Because I didn't hear, does that encompass the purchase price then?
Sorry.
I don't know, what's the motion?
Well, the motion was to pass Samantha's recommendation that we allow them to purchase it. Okay, I guess, sorry, the price, I didn't include that. Did you want to make that separate?
No, I just asked the question because I was confused as to what was being said. Thank you.
Okay.
So the cost of the property, Samantha, is in your report?
It's in the appraisal report.
Okay.
That was attached to the report.
Okay. All right then. So I have a mover and a seconder. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. So, all right, thank you. The next item here is Peterborough County official plan update. Samantha,
No further comments at this time.
okay. There's a motion to receive. Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Clement. Any questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right, thank you, Samantha.
Thank you.
So we're going to move into staff reports for information. We'll go through them here individually. I think there's 6 of them. So building department update for December 2024. Economic development, social media for December 2024. Economic development fourth quarter, social media insights. Next item is economic development fire and ice festival. Go ahead, Dr. Doherty.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, on the, I think it's attached in there, the budget. It says that we're gonna fund this out of council initiative. I believe that's part of the economic development budget, is not?
It is.
Okay.
Next on here is the report Parks and Rec Department update. The next item is electoral ward system bylaw for adoption. No questions? I'll move into, go ahead, Councillor Flagler.
Yes, I have one question for the FDEV and the Fire and Ice Festival. I read somewhere in these reports, I can't find it, Sherry, sorry. You are, would like to send out flyers, am I correct? Am I in the right section for that question, or? I see. So really tight. There we go, thank you. Okay, so your flyers that are, that you'd like to send out in the utility bill?
Through Mayor Martin, that will be covered under
Action.
for actions. It's a little bit further down on the agenda.
Okay, so I'll save my question till then, thank you, Sherry.
Okay. All right then.
Just, yeah, sorry, same, for the fire and ice, Sherry, the budgeting. Revenues, very good job, by the way, laying all that out. How are we coming along in terms of more so, I guess, the sponsorships? I guess the stuff will be sold at the event, a lot of the tubes and the pins, but sponsorships, how's that coming along?
Through Mayor Martin. So we have a team working on that, but so far I'm taking the lead on some of our corporate. So our corporate sponsors as of today, Allen Insurance, so that's, they're at $1,000. Belmont Lodge has, and I'm just waiting for JJ and Tanya to confirm if they want to sponsor again this year at that level. We have to get that in because all of that information is included in our radio and TV ads. Yeah. So we're in a day or two of that. And we are moving along. We're probably at the halfway mark in terms of sponsorship, but a lot of that is where the information's been pushed to them, and now we have to make those calls and stop by and collect.
Good job.
Okay. Well, there's no other questions for the information. I'll take a motion that we receive the staff report for information report. Moved by Councillor Clement, second by Councillor Flagler. All in favor? And that's carried. And so we're moving into staff reports with follow-up action, and it's Travis, the first item there is the indemnification agreement with the County City Health.
For you, Mr. Mayor, as council's aware, we took over septics November 17th, so Peterborough Public Health no longer does that. We've got just over 30 permits that they've issued that we have to do inspections on, so there'll be some shared stuff there. The agreement itself has been reviewed by staff and the municipal solicitor, and it's also been reviewed and signed by Peterborough Public Health for council's consideration.
Very good. All right, so the motion is that we receive the report information moved by Deputy Mayor Webb. Second.
No. All right. Sorry, the motion is to enter into the agreement.
Oh, yeah, I got the recommendation. Okay. Okay, yep, so that's moved by Deputy Mayor Webb and second by Councillor Clement. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so the next report here is Rural Links Internet Tower. So this is with regards to South Front Peninsula. Council direction. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, nothing. I'll just move the recommendation.
Okay.
I think we discussed this at the last meeting or the meeting before.
Yep. So motion to with the recommendation moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. The next item here is the Peninsula Road open road allowance. Come off into.
Just for you, Mr. Mayor, the only additional information from the report, as I did have a chance to speak with the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Flat yesterday, and they as well are in favor of option 3 and have advised they'll obtain the necessary approvals for the accessory structure. And they were unable to attend today.
Okay, so
Yeah, well, I just answer my question. I was just gonna ask if we talk to the applicants and if this is what the applicants want, then I think we should try and meet them in the middle. So I'll just make a motion that we,
option 3.
whatever Travis said.
Okay, so we
Option
have
three, yes.
Deputy Mayor Webb that we go with option 3, seconded by Councilor Flagler. Any other questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Oh,
All right.
Sorry.
Mayor Martin, sorry. So who is paying in this? Are we splitting the costs or are we gonna work on that with them? How does that work? Right, Travis?
I thought it was a cost.
It just,
Sorry, just so it's clear.
Yeah,
I thought that had been discussed as to what we were going to do with the cost.
I was just trying to get refreshing. Okay, sorry.
okay, I think it was at our cost.
Our cost?
So we should include that in the motion.
Okay. All right, so option 3 with at our cost.
Cost. Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
And that was okay with the mover and seconder? All right, all in favor? That's carried. All right, next item here is, sorry, with regards to the in-kind facility rental request from Baltimore Society. Council thoughts there. This is, use town hall second Tuesday each month.
motion to approve.
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Webb that we approve, second by Councilor Doherty. Any questions? All in favor? And that's carried.
Is that sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's something I don't know. We don't want, but will we advertise that on our website? You're saying now that we're somewhat paying for it, possible we get it advertised this on our website?
Advertise this event.
Yeah.
Program.
Yeah.
We can put it in our calendar. Yeah.
Or even just a
Yep.
post about
Yep.
it.
So,
So if we're gonna pay for it, we might as well get a little recognition, right? So.
yeah, Sherry's,
Through you, Mayor Martin, this is a support group
Okay.
of the Alzheimer's group, so they actually work with social services and what have you. It's sort of a private space. And so I believe we have to work with them to know how to support them. If it is something they want to publicize, we certainly would do that. But if it's more that it's sort of at the invitation of, I'm not sure that we can, but that's something we can clarify with Samantha, who's our contact there.
Thank you, very, very good points. I just, like I said, it's nice nice to see it's, I don't know, staff or whoever's reached out that we're getting involved with some of these issues because they affect quite a few members of our community, right? So it's nice to let people know we're trying to do something, so.
okay.
Thank you, Sherry.
All right, so the next item is similar, fire and ice, looking for rental too, in kind. Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb. Seconder, Councilor Clement, question or comment? No questions? Go ahead.
We used to put on there the in-kind cost. So that we not only giving it, but we are also have to pay for it. And I think, I didn't see it in there, but I thought maybe it would come later. I'm not sure. So it's been on before. I don't know whether.
Yeah, it would be good to show some in kind costs to the whole budget of fire and ice.
Through you, Mayor Martin, I didn't realize the reference I thought Councillor Doherty was making that in the report that's submitted with that, you include that as a bullet point or some piece of information, but I could also note that in our final report on event in terms it'll be listed as in-kind resources just from the fire and ice perspective.
Doherty?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, this has been a topic that come up before that the village provides nothing for these organizations. And that was a step that we took a year and a half or a year ago to put in. So we are contributing, although it's not a balance sheet item per se. So I don't know where it's just, I think it's part of the motion.
Remember, does Josh give us an in-kind quarterly report? Sure, how?
Josh or
Well, for any of the ones, most of these in-kinds are through the Parks and Rec.
I don't know about an official
We
report.
will bring a report.
That would be
to you,
Mark.
yes. Yeah, we have
Each
discussed, the staff has
person.
discussed bringing a report forward, so we will bring a summary report and include them in future reports.
Mr. I don't think the Alzheimer's and the other ones that are simply opening the door and closing it is probably less important or less costly than the fire and ice, which if you read the report, the town hall's got what, 6 meetings? We've got several days, which just takes a lot of labor, that's all. It's more intense and a larger numbers.
So these are things we do hear, some things around, how much we give the hall away. As we start moving forward to any work up there, it is good to know. So maybe in the future, if you could get an update on, how many times the hall is given away as a in-kind donation, not necessarily just for your group, but for us to know how many are really using it and nothing, it's in kind. So, okay. So the next item here is again, you need a motion there, Bob, for that?
We
did that.
Moved by Dr. Aware, seconded by Councillor Clement. All in favor?
All in favor.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. Next item on here is youth committee. Similarly, facility request. Moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that's carried. And the next item here is Sherry with regards to this is what we talked about earlier, the mailing inserts.
You have a question?
Right?
For you, Mayor Martin. I just have one question regarding the inserts in the monthly utility bills. You're targeting the town people. What is going to be done for the residents and the cottagers?
Through you, Mayor Martin, we specifically looked for potential communication vehicles that would not increase cost significantly, wouldn't add a great deal of effort either to the administration. And this is one that came to our attention. To my knowledge, if we did a mail out, given the recent increase in postage, it would be cost prohibitive. And it's important to note that there is 500 or so that we mail out today that receive paper-based billing because they're not part of the pre-authorized payment plan. Under that, they don't receive monthly billing. So we wouldn't mail out to them again because you're going to be adding, I'm not sure now how, I think it's $190 or it's a significant postal cost per piece. So at this point, we're not suggesting that we incur that cost as part of our initiatives. It looked like an opportunity. We wanted to seize upon it, that it's challenging to reach people, as you know, in the community.
Through you, Mayor Martin, I appreciate your answer. Again, my question is, you're using the utility bill to put in these ads, but it's only for the people that live in town. I think that's an unfair approach because there's more than just the town village people living here. It's everyone. So if you're going to advertise something, it should be done to the township as a whole and not using the utility bill as your, advertisement ways.
Mayor Martin, we could
There's gotta
certainly
be something we can do, right?
we could provide you with information so that you could make an informed decision, which is to highlight how much it would cost to do a monthly mailer, because that's what we're talking about. 50, I think we have more than 5,000 in total, 5,183 or so. So that would be a significant cost to do a monthly mailer. But I appreciate your point of view in terms of being fair and equitable in the way in which information is shared.
So this question here, if I understood you right, it would just be mailed out to the ones that get their water bill or their utilities by mail,
Through you,
which is
Mayor.
probably a lot less than there was 10 years ago.
Through you, Mayor Martin, it's just a small number now. In total, it's with the businesses included, it's just around it's a 425. We just saw it as an opportunity for $100 to reach 425 homes or businesses.
Deputy Mayor Webb, then Councillor
Go
Clark.
ahead for your.
Through Mayor Martin, so Sherry, your first note says to make 5,100 impressions per year.
So that was the 425 times 12 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, you wanted every month. Gotcha, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Sherry, I'm just wondering if 12 is 12 too much? You know, and like, in terms of our taxes, they go out twice a year. It'd be nice if it was 4 times a year. And we could do it that way. But I understand it's good, nice to see in terms of trying to keep the cost down, because yeah, when we got into these mailers not too long ago, I couldn't believe how much it was to mail things out to everybody. Like I don't know, what I'm thinking is there a way we could do it? I know it's only twice a year, that's what I don't like about it, but keep it in the tax bills, so we can cover that off. And maybe to Councillor Flagler's point in terms of people that, well, should reach everybody, but I mean, if we want to get something out a little bit more often, if we put the flyers out and we just maybe try to designate certain areas. So like what I'm thinking is obviously Cordova, maybe Sam's Place or something there where like we can go around and kind of make a relation with whoever, right? And ask them obviously if we can, if they let us drop these, but so say Sam's Place or one's places, 150 or 100 or whatever of, you know, every 2 or 3 months, we drop them in there. Maybe we could do the same at Foodland. Just areas where hopefully after a while, the public would know that these things are there for them. Because in terms of, I don't know how else you're gonna get it out to say the cottagers and that without paying it. And we just don't have the money to be mailing things out, you know, 3 or 4 times a year at that cost, so.
Agreed. There's also lake associations.
Yes.
That you could be just emailing them or emailing, like you said, the Sam's Place, like. I'm just, I don't get any bills anymore in the mail. The only one I get is for Havelock, so. I mean, mine, I would like just emails. I mean, the paper waste is.
But Councillor Flagler, I think made a great point there in terms of the lake associations. Do we do that already? Do we?
Through you, Mayor Martin, one of the challenges with email distribution is to have permission. You have to have permission, of course, to use their email. We do have terrific relationships with our lake associations, but they're very selective in terms of the information that they're going to push out and how often. And often what they'll do is, and I know that they work closely with the mayor, as they come close to their newsletter prep time, they'll include what are some of the initiatives you're working on. So timing's everything with them. It doesn't always include, the window doesn't allow us to include sort of upcoming events. And they're more focused on initiatives. What are we working on that might improve life and services for their members? In terms of sharing, we do share it at least to 4 of the lake associations, and that does reach for those that are members. Not all people who have properties and reside on the lakes are members of the lake associations or cottage associations. That's something to bear in mind as well. And we do put flyers up in all of our, whether it's within our municipal properties, at the libraries, we do post on the bulletin board at Foodland for all of our upcoming events. We try to hit the restaurants. Some of our volunteers are kind enough to do that for me.
Okay, Councillor Flagler and then Deputy Mayor Webb.
Webb, you can go first.
Oh, sorry, yeah. In terms of the Lake Association newsletters that they hand out once a year, do we have something that, you know what I mean? Do we have a standard that we put out to all these lake associations, or is it if, say, Belmont Lake phones you, then you'll do one for Belmont Lake, and then if Kosh, you know what I'm getting at? What I'm saying is maybe we should have something this time of year, we come up with, say, last year's highlights or whatever, a page that we can print out. And then other things to your point, because they're good points in terms of we can't advertise for things that say may pop up in the summer, but in that page, there could be a link, or if we started to do, like I said, different businesses, we could list those businesses and say, hey, you know, our newsletters or our flyers are at these places so that you can look for, you know what I mean? Coming events through the summer and things like that.
Through you, Mayor Martin. So the mayor typically will provide sort of mayor's comments, so an update from the mayor, and that typically is focused on initiatives, key initiatives with an update, readings from council. When I'm interacting with them, I've always tried to first to provide information at the HBMLA Association. So that's Neil, sharing information with him. But I've also found it's effective to make sure that I share that with my contacts at lake associations. With a lot of the what's coming in terms of events, if I can get those that are annual calendars, that's very helpful. So I can certainly continue to provide them with those dates that we, you know, the Summerfest or Canada, you know, our Canada Day or our pumpkin parades, fire and ice.
What I was kind of thinking is, because I forgot the mayor's message, and that is important, and it's in there all the time. Maybe if we kind of piggyback off that, so we could have the mayor's message, and then maybe on the back of that page, as I said, there could be whatever you come up, like the list of our accomplishments or list of things that we want to promote. Well, because to me, those things, like just for myself, that newsletter, when I get it at the cottage, is going to stay in my cottage for that whole summer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So if I'm in there in June, it's going to be there. And if I pick it up, if I walk in September, the same thing is going to be there. And I think a lot of people are the same way. Just that that's something, you know, you keep around and have there. And at low cost, right? That so that we're not mailing out $5,000 and $10,000 mailings every 2 or 3 months. So
Okay, Beth?
Yes, through you, Mayor Martin. Our website, people join the website, do they?
We have a subscription model, much like a lot of other municipalities. So you can subscribe to receive updates on specific areas and
You have to pay
categories.
money to
No.
receive the information.
Subscription's free.
So that you go on the website, so then maybe that's the approach that you should try and work on, is encourage people to go on that and get your email address. Like, we need everyone's email address, and then it's like a click.
Through you, Mayor Martin, well, we quite agree. We would like more subscribers to our webpage because it'll be accurate and up to date. It is a challenge to motivate people to do that, to find them and get them to subscribe, show them how. We've even played with some videos where we can send out a link or, you know, something to show them how to navigate to the webpage to show. Because if on the subscription, as soon as you select subscribe, then you'll see the categories. For example, council agendas and upcoming special meetings is one option, but you might have planning, you might have public works, emergency alerts, economic development. We definitely want to push that, and we certainly we'll try harder to get the information out.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I'm just a little confused on the actual document in utility mailing book. So we're going to mail them, we're going to insert them with the mailing that people get paper copies 4 times a year.
Through you, Mayor Martin, the original intent was this goes out monthly. So every month, let's say the first couple of days of the month, they'll receive their statement for the month, which is due by the end of the month. It's a 1-pager where our machine will allow you to insert the same 8.5 by 11. It auto folds and inserts it for the administrator responsible. And then it's passed through the postage machine at no additional cost. What you're looking at is the cost of the additional paper and the color printing, if we choose to go that way, or black and white.
Well, so how many are sending out? Like, how frequently are we sending? Are we sending a monthly, quarterly? Because I'm just having trouble with some of the math. That's all. I was just trying to.
No, that's certainly. In terms of the pages per month, so you're looking at, again, it would be inserted with the monthly utilities billing. So it goes out every month. It's a 1-pager that is folded, inserted with.
I got that, but.
Yeah.
It's only
Let's get
part-
back on track here. So today's is about the utility bill and doing a monthly mailing. We do have a communication problem. It's always been there. And no matter what you offer, it's never going to be enough. So this was something, an idea that somebody had, that we do a monthly mailing with the utility bill, and it sounds like it hits around 450 homes or thereabouts, but it is missing the rest of the township. So we're trying to get the whole township. And we've been trying to figure that out forever. And we're doing everything that we can. This was another thing. It's kind of like the tax bill. We try to, instead of it going out empty, we try to make sure there's some information in there for whoever wants to look at it. And we always hear that not a lot of people read it. They just want to know the bottom line. What do I owe? And let's get on with it. But that being said, economically, it's a little more, it is efficient to try and have as much information in that bill without paying extra for mailing. So for today, we're talking about the utility bill and monthly mailing. And I'm hearing different things here, whether that's too much, whether we did it quarterly. I don't know. I think for today, we just need to make a decision here. Do we want to see this go out monthly, or do you want a scaled back version? Totally up to council. Go ahead.
Just for myself, I don't know if there's enough to go monthly. I think quarterly, like every 3 months, would be more than enough. I could be wrong on that, but as I said, especially at this time of year, I don't know. Sherry's gonna be hard pressed to fill a newsletter with new news, I think, from month to month.
Through you, Mayor Martin, the focus was coming events, really promoting what's happening in the community now. Those that we sponsor, and probably in the subtext, some of like the SALC, the Seniors Active Living Center, our Lions, some of the community group, but it really is more event driven from my perspective. That's not to suggest that we shouldn't broaden it. But what I'm hearing is the concern is that you might have a scenario where House A on King Street receives information where House B doesn't. And that the fact that House P doesn't have the information actually might create a problem. And I appreciate that is not something that I had given consideration. I saw this as an opportunity to reach another 400 and some odd people in a very definitive way. But I recognize having councillors explain that this might actually create problems if it's not in an equitable, inclusive way. Especially within the village.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you remember, I'm one of those ones, I don't get a bill. So, and I can see problems with my neighbors. You got it, I didn't. So I think, sure, I'd rather defer this and see you come up with maybe something else. Sorry.
Okay, so we still need a motion here that.
I'll make a motion to defer, please, to see if we can work on some other solution.
All right, yeah. Okay, so motion to defer to this, moved by Councillor Clement, second by Councillor Flagler. Questions, comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
All right, the next item here is the library basement. Some direction needed here, so Bob, you want
to? Yes, through you, Mayor Martin. To the rest of council, Mayor Martin and I were invited to 2 meetings in the past few months, one with the Historical Society and one with the Library Board. There was a request for exclusive use of the basement area of the Havelock Library for cataloging of the historical artifacts by the Historical Society. So there are 2 options that have been presented, 6-month use of the space or a 6-week use of the space or something in between. So that's 2 options for council's consideration.
Okay, so option 1 is for 6 months and option 2 is for 6 weeks. Just to be clear. So we would need to move around option 1 or 2. Councilor Flagler, go ahead.
Mayor Martin, I would, I guess move the motion for option 1 for the 6 months.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for option 1, moved by Councillor Flagler. Councillor Doherty, you're seconding. Second by Councillor Doherty. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? And that's carried. So, okay. Next We move into correspondence. We don't have any action items in correspondence. We have two information items. One is the media release from Peterborough Public Health with regards to the stay safe in the cold temperatures of the winter, and the Halliburton Court, the Northumberland, Peterborough, the health, Board of Health summer. So there's two items there that were for information. Is there any questions around those two items? If not, I'll get a motion that we receive the correspondence. Moved by Councillor Clement, second by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay. So we'll move into liaison reports, and for County Council, there was no meeting last week, so there's nothing to report there. We did have some PSB. I'm trying to catch up here, but we had a PSB meeting back on October 21st, and there's some minutes here. If anybody have any questions around that? If not, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mayor Martin. I'm sorry, can you repeat your last statement you just made?
So so we're in liaison reports, and Deputy Mayor Webb had a board meeting there, and the minutes from the October 21st meeting are there. You had any questions? Okay. And the next, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just gonna say that was the original, like we're still in the process of setting this board up, so that was the first meeting. But there was the one item in there, I think, I hope everybody did notice, was there was the motion passed for the $600 fee, which would be paid by each township. So I think I made everybody aware of that a month or two ago when it happened, but just to remind you that there might be more fees coming, but I will make you aware when it happens.
Yeah.
It's good. It's done for the good of us. You remember this. It's for them. Okay.
As little pain as possible, Councillor Doherty.
Okay, the next item on here is the municipal brief from Pearl Valley. A little bit of information there.
Through you, Mayor Martin. So I realize you sit on the board, so I'm gonna direct this to you. So what is our percentage, I guess, that we give to Pearl Valley, or what, like, can you explain a little, just quickly?
So it changes, and I don't have the number, but we're around 39% of the levy we pay at Havelock. That's what it used to be. It fluctuates percent here or there. But yeah, we're about 40%, say.
Sorry, one more question. How many townships are actually part of Pearl Valley?
8 or 9.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So we're the biggest majority?
We're the biggest, yeah.
Some of them are quite small age.
Yeah,
like some of
some-
them would be less
some are
than
like-
10, like 2 or 3 are less than 10. That's what I mean, we carry.
We carry-
bulk
So
of
if we pay 400,000, there's some on there that pay, 15,000 or whatever, 10,000, like they're very small.
Okay.
Like Sterling. So.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Martin, if council wishes to see the municipalities involved, it is listed there on the brief, just to the left.
Oh, I did see that, sorry, yes, I'm sorry, my apologies.
So I am chair of that until Thursday, and then there's an election, and you're only allowed to sit for 2 years, so somebody else can take her over next week.
You're done.
It should be.
Should
Um,
get the short straw again.
yeah, well, if there is a bylaw, so it should be done. So go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Remember, the Pearl Valley, so the budgeting process is done by activity
By what they do.
for like each, is that how it's divvied up?
No, it's by assessment, like it was an engineered. Yeah, I don't know 100% how they come up with the percentages, but it's basically, I think assessment was a portion of the thing. I'd have to get back to you on exactly how that was derived, but it's not activity, but it looks that way. That's what I always follow on all the reports. Not always, like this one here looks pretty proportionate for like Marmor Lake, 21%. Us 39% when you look at generic regulations and stuff. But it doesn't work on that, but it sometimes looks like that, but it's there's more to it than that.
Well, if we also have the larger number of activities, we also have the larger fees. as well, so.
Yeah,
Which supports all of the members.
that's right.
So I appreciate if you just, because it is on the budget to come off, at least it's very healthy for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
A motion to receive the liaison reports, moved by Councilor Schleifer, seconded by Councilor Summit, all in favor, and that's carried. So I don't have any written notice of motion. Is there any oral notice of motion for today's meeting? Seeing none. Other business. Councilor Doherty, there's something here on you.
Dear Mr. Mayor, yeah, I would like to present a motion that we write to Peterborough Housing with a request of to have them return the land on Smith Drive that was given to them in May of 2018, and I believe there was quads to be built on it at that time. At least that's what I'm aware of anyway. And just to see whether we can get the land back, because it's for 7 years and there's no development. And because, maybe we could use it now, and they're not doing anything with it. So I just like to put the motion that we write them and ask them to return the land to us, and please advise so that we could give them our lawyer's name so that they could get it started. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion on the floor to ask Peterborough Housing to return the property back to us on Smith Drive. Deputy Mayor Webb, go ahead.
I appreciate where Councillor Doherty's coming from on this. This is something that's been sitting there for quite some time. Things change, but we were told a while ago in terms of things would be moving on this property. I'm just wondering if directly asking them for it back is the best way to start off. And all I'm saying is that perhaps if the first letter that was sent maybe said something to the effect of we see that nothing's been done there for a number of years. We're not hearing any plans of things being done. So unless there's a plan, please make us aware if there is a plan to do something with this. And if not, then to your point, then yes, we would like to start the negotiations of possibly getting this land back because we need movement on this. But I don't know if I'll defer to Councillor Doherty.
All right then.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The reason that I didn't think of going it that way, because I've been advised for the last year and a half that somebody has been working on that for us. I haven't heard anything back that it's moving forward. There's a plan. It's going to be 2026. I have heard nothing there, any concrete as there's movement on the actual real estate that was given. So that's why I think informally, I thought that we had covered that. So this would just kind of formalize it, but I'm open. I mean, it's just and
I understand your frustration. I think all members of council understand your frustration. We all thought that something would be over there by now. I'm just saying in terms of moving it forward and maybe not only not rubbing them the wrong way, but I don't know if we've got exactly what we want there either. So, I mean, until we get our ducks in a row, I don't know if I'm in a huge rush to take that property back. I'd like to see if Peterborough County or whoever is up there, Peterborough Housing Corp, has some kind of plan that we are included in. If not, they would liable to come back and say, no, we haven't, in which case I agree with you. And, we could send a letter off the next day in terms of thank you, we've heard what we have and we'd like to move on this. But I wouldn't want to go and say, can we have the land back and have there be something, not that I'm holding my breath with anticipation, but kind of hoping maybe that there is something actually in the works here that we haven't been made aware of.
So there is a motion on the floor also.
Can you repeat the motion?
I can't.
Through you, Mayor Martin, we have a mover. We don't have a seconder yet. But the motion was proposed that staff write to Peterborough Housing and request that the land, the undeveloped land at Smith Drive be returned to the township where the quads were intended to be built.
All right, so through you, Mayor Martin, is the mover willing to add in?
Well, I'll look for a
asking
seconder
the
first, and
questions?
then let's see if we got a seconder for the motion.
Oh, I'm not, okay.
Okay, just I gotta call, is there a seconder for the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none. Okay, so now the motion is defeated, but there's an opportunity here to massage it.
You wanna ask if he would like to?
Yes, would you like to?
No.
Okay, so I think there's merit to, like, so I've done a lot of conversations with the city. So I've had a lot of conversation with the city during my joint services meeting. I've talked to Deb Leal. Bonnie, our warden, has talked to the Peterborough Housing and informed them that this is really important for our municipality, that these are sitting there, and it's a quick solution to 8 houses. And they keep going for the big things. So there is an opportunity here. I think there's merit here it might mean more to come from our council. So the motion might be similar to what Deputy Mayor Webb said. I can't repeat what he said, but
So, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It kind of it'd be to Peterborough County, we are wondering.
Housing.
Peterborough, sorry.
Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
We're wondering what your future plans are for the property on Smith Drive. We see there's been no real movement or haven't heard any movement in terms of possible future development. So we're wondering if there is going to be any, and if not, the township is considering possibly or we would like to have, dialogue about getting the property back so we can develop it, because
we have investment in.
Well, that's right. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's in a unique area for our town. Like, we already got other development there. Like, it's in a good area for new development, right? So I mean, I don't want them sitting on it, because I'm pretty sure we could get somebody to move on it, right? So that's not very clear, Bob. So you're gonna
our infrastructure didn't.
I can't get off on a rant, but
So, Councilor Doherty.
Sir, Mr. I appreciate what you're saying. And I'm Peterborough Housing, and I get back to you and say, yes, we do.
what is
No.
Yeah.
You asked if there's a development out in the future. Yes, there is.
Okay, well,
with
So,
the
you
time,
know what I mean?
Thank you.
You know,
No,
that's what I mean.
No,
And that's why I went
this is a good
definitive.
point. This is a good point. This is things we talked about before in terms of making these more specific.
Yeah.
So can you please detail your plans for the property?
with the
for us.
timeline.
Exactly. With the time.
Next month.
Is that okay? No, I'm just,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, it's certainly better than just asking.
Yes.
Because apparently we've been asking and asking, and we've got the same crickets in the past.
And I apologize for making such a weak motion. I'm trying to, no, but it did need to be corrected.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Did you want to read that, Bob? I put it on the floor.
Another shot.
Okay.
That's exactly how I said it. No, we won't do that.
Shorthand.
So staff is directed to write to Peterborough Housing in order to have Peterborough Housing clarify their future plans for the Smith Drive property with timelines included and details regarding the development. And if there are no future plans for development, the township would like to commence negotiations for the return of the property to the township
Immediately.
immediately.
Yeah.
Second the motion.
Second motion, Councilor Doherty. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, that's all we had in, oh no, the budget meeting schedule. So, I suggested to Bob about, was it 28th of the Tuesday after the.
29 or 30 maybe.
Not me.
Okay,
Vacation.
okay.
Yes.
How long are you away for?
I think I'd have to check my calendar.
Okay.
28th, 9th and 30th.
That week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's, so it's a heavy week anyway, so,
Early February.
yeah, I'm into February. About February 6th.
It's-
It's a Thursday.
I don't know about you, I'm okay with waiting as long as you want to come before we,
Yeah.
this is for final?
Well, we don't know.
Okay, no, I'm just saying.
So I have the 6th open. If I don't know what other calendars look like.
Whatever, I'm good, give me a date,
I'm good, Jim.
pick a date, guys. Jerry.
Okay. February 6th, does that work for everyone? 9:30?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay, yeah.
February 6th at 9:30, Bob will send out an electronic invite. Yep. I know, it's helping. So, okay, all right then, so we did that. And next item on here is bylaws. We have a bylaw here, bylaws.
We did the first one.
Yeah, so 2025-003, the bylaws. Top up and close the Havelock lands and some most particularly described in the document. So moved by Councillor Clement, second by Deputy Mayor Webb. All in favor? And that's carried. And the next bylaw is a bylaw you authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into the identification agreement with Peterborough County City Health. I think it's a different name soon.
They've changed their name.
Anyways, motion to authorize us to sign the agreement. And that's moved by Councillor Clement, second Deputy Mayor Webb, all in favor, carried. Okay, now I need a motion that we go into closed session under section 239(2)K of the Municipal Act for addition plan procedure criteria or instructions to be applied to any which you carried on or carried on by or on behalf of the municipality of local board. So motion to go into close was moved by Deputy Mayor Webb and seconded by Councillor Doherty. All in favor? And that. Oh.
Supposed to be normal
Everybody's not?
meetings.
Okay. All right, so we're back in open and so I need a confirming bylaw.
Yep.
I'm lost it here. Motion for the confirming bylaw moved by Councillor Clement, second by Councillor Flagler, all in favor, and that's carried. Motion to adjourn moved by Deputy Mayor Webb, second by Councillor Doherty. All in favor, and that's carried. Thank you.